What are you doing? I told you this was important. Get over here right now, he says.
Have you ever walked into a place where you had every right to be, only to be told you didn't belong? Imagine standing in a Grand Bank lobby, holding proof of your identity, your wealth, your status, and still being dismissed as if you were invisible. That's exactly what happened to Dr. Maya Johnson, a black CEO whose quiet strength turned humiliation into history. In a matter of minutes, she faced a choice: stay silent, swallow the insult like countless others before her, or stand tall, expose the injustice, and risk shaking the very walls of one of America's largest banks. What would you have done in her place? Would you have stayed quiet to avoid the scene, or would you have dared to speak knowing the world might be watching? This is not just her story. It could be any of ours, and it forces us to ask when dignity is denied. What is the price of silence? Stay with me as we uncover how one woman's calm defiance fired an entire branch in 10 minutes and lit a spark for change across the nation. If this story moves you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next powerful journey. The lobby of Sterling & Co.'s flagship branch gleamed like a palace. The marble floors reflected the soft golden light from chandeliers that hung 20 feet above. It was early October in New York, the kind of crisp morning when people walked a little faster, clutching their coffee cups, chasing another day of business. Inside the bank, however, the air was slower, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Customers waiting in line checked their watches. Bankers in tailored suits greeted familiar faces with rehearsed warmth. Everything was polished, professional, and unmistakably exclusive. Into this setting walked Dr. Maya Johnson. She wore a plain navy sweater, jeans, and sneakers that had seen better days. A canvas tote bag hung from her shoulder. To most people in the room, she looked like any other middle-aged woman running errands before work. Yet there was something steady about her walk, a kind of quiet gravity. She moved without rushing, as though time itself bent to her rhythm. Still, the eyes in the lobby told another story. A man in a pinstripe suit glanced her up and down, then quickly looked away. A woman in pearls shifted her handbag closer to her side. Even the young teller, Eric Collins, sitting behind the front desk, tilted his head with a faint smirk, as if wondering what she was doing there. Maya had noticed these stares before, in other lobbies, in other cities. They no longer startled her. What struck her each time was how predictable it had become. She reminded herself to breathe slowly, to keep her shoulders relaxed, to carry herself with the dignity her parents had taught her. She stepped up to the counter. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm but clear. "I need access to my account and the safety deposit box tied to it." Eric blinked at her, then leaned forward. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Maya replied. "I was told I could walk in for this." Eric gave a half laugh. "For something like that, we usually require prior scheduling and a certain level of client verification." His words trailed off, but the implication lingered in the air. Maya handed over her ID and a sleek black card embossed with Sterling & Kobe's crest. The card was not just a premium customer badge. It was one reserved for the firm's largest stakeholders. Eric stared at it, confused. He turned toward the side office where Linda Harper, the branch manager, stood observing the lobby like a guard at a private club. Linda walked over, heels clicking against the marble. She was tall, immaculately dressed, with a practiced smile that carried more calculation than warmth. She picked up the card, inspected it, then looked at Maya as though weighing her against some invisible scale. What exactly is it you need today? Linda asked. My safety deposit box, Maya repeated. And I'll need to initiate a transfer. Linda's smile tightened. I see. Well, these boxes aren't for everyone. We have standards, and sometimes appearances matter in maintaining those standards. The words fell like ice on the marble floor. A few customers nearby glanced over. One woman whispered to her husband. Eric shifted awkwardly behind the desk, but he didn't speak. Maya felt the familiar sting. For a moment, her mind flickered back to her father standing in a small-town bank 30 years earlier, being told his loan application was denied despite perfect credit. She remembered the look in his eyes that day, wounded, but unbroken. She steadied herself, channeling that memory into silence, letting the pause speak louder than anger. I have the documentation right here, Maya said, sliding a folder across the counter. Everything you need. Linda didn't touch the folder. Instead, she gave a small laugh, meant to sound casual, but cutting in its dismissal. Ma'am, maybe you'd be more comfortable at a community bank. This branch handles a certain caliber of client. I just don't think this is the right place for you. And then came the words that froze the room. You don't belong here. The sentence echoed under the high ceiling, louder than Linda intended, heard by more people than she realized. For a second, even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to stop. Maya stood still, her face unreadable. Inside, a familiar storm gathered, anger pressing against restraint, pain pressing against patience. She glanced at the large clock mounted on the wall, its hands ticking forward with steady certainty. She thought of the pocket watch her father had left her, sitting safely in her bag. She thought of the years she had spent building her company, enduring meetings where her voice was doubted until the balance sheets proved her right. She thought of the promise she had made to herself long ago, never to walk away quietly when dignity was on the line. The lobby had become a stage, and every pair of eyes was fixed on her. She could feel the story forming in their minds, an outsider asking for something she didn't deserve. But Maya knew another story was about to unfold, one that none of them expected. She took a slow breath. The next move, she knew, would define not just this moment, but the future of everyone in the room. For a moment after Linda Harper's words, the lobby of Sterling & Co. seemed suspended in silence. The hum of the computers, the shuffle of papers, even the clicking of heels across the marble slowed, as though the entire building waited to see how the woman in the navy sweater would respond. Dr. Maya Johnson kept her gaze steady. She had learned long ago that silence could speak louder than outrage. She let the words, "You don't belong here," hang in the air until they began to weigh on Linda herself. Only then did Maya pick up the folder of documents she had offered and slide them closer to the edge of the counter. These are the same papers every client provides, she said softly. Driver's license, account details, corporate authorization. Everything is current. Everything is valid. Eric Collins shifted uneasily in his chair. He picked up one of the documents, glanced at it, then quickly set it down, as if touching it burned his fingers. Ms. Harper, he said, his voice breaking slightly. It looks complete to me. Linda gave him a sharp look that silenced him. Then she turned back to Maya, her tone cool but condescending. Our standards require more than just papers. We also look at credibility, at reputation. It isn't only about what's on paper. Behind Maya, the line of waiting customers had grown longer. Some craned their necks to see. Others whispered into their phones. A man in a business suit whispered to his colleague, "What's going on?" His colleague shrugged, but didn't take his eyes off the scene. Maya inhaled slowly. Part of her wanted to turn and walk out, to let the bank reveal itself in its small-minded prejudice. But another part of her, the part forged in boardrooms and courtrooms, the part that carried her family's legacy, knew walking away would mean giving them exactly what they wanted: silence. "I am not asking for special treatment," she said. "I am asking for the same process you extend to every other client. Nothing more, nothing less." Linda's lips curved into a smile that wasn't a smile at all. "Exactly. And our process tells me we should pause here. Perhaps you'd be better off trying a branch in another neighborhood." The implication was sharp, unmistakable. Another neighborhood, another world. Eric cleared his throat, trying to mask his discomfort. "Maybe we could just verify electronically, like we usually do." But Linda raised her hand, cutting him off. "Eric, don't get ahead of yourself." She leaned closer to Maya. "Let me be clear. You might carry a card. You might have papers. But this branch protects its image. We have to make sure that the people we serve reflect the prestige of Sterling & Co. Do you understand?" A flush of anger pressed against Maya's chest. She could feel the heat rising in her face, the urge to shout back, to call out the hypocrisy. Yet she forced herself to breathe. She thought of the board meetings where men twice her age had tried to dismiss her. She thought of her mother's advice. "When they try to shake you, plant your feet deeper." "I understand," Maya replied. Her voice was even, almost too calm. "I understand that you are applying rules to me that you are not applying to others." From the corner of her eye, she saw a man in line step forward with only a driver's license in hand. Eric glanced at it, typed something quickly, and smiled. "You're all set, sir. Right this way." The man walked past Maya with a sympathetic shrug, as if to say, "I see it, but it's not my fight." The contrast was undeniable. The proof was playing out in real time. Linda folded her arms. "Ma'am, please don't make this difficult." The word difficult hit harder than intended. It wasn't just about paperwork. It was about character, about labeling her as troublesome, as unworthy. Maya's fingers brushed the edge of her tote bag where her father's old pocket watch rested inside. She remembered his words. "One day, you'll face moments where the clock is louder than the voices around you. When that happens, trust yourself." The clock on the wall ticked on. Her mind raced. She weighed her options: leave and let the sting pass, or stand her ground and risk escalation. She thought of the employees who might lose their jobs if she acted. She thought of her responsibility to show others, especially younger women of color watching from the sidelines, that silence wasn't the answer. Finally she said, "Then I would like to speak with someone above you. Someone who can actually authorize what is already authorized." Linda chuckled, shaking her head. "There's no one above me here. I am the branch manager. What I say stands." The words echoed, heavy and final, but Maya noticed the way Eric's eyes flickered nervously toward the security desk. At that desk stood Daniel Brooks, the guard. He had been watching the exchange closely. He wasn't smiling, nor did he look comfortable. His hand rested near his radio, but his body language told another story. Hesitation, maybe even doubt. Maya caught his gaze for a second. There was no hostility in his eyes, only uncertainty. It was a flicker of humanity in a room that felt colder by the minute. Inside her, the battle raged. Should she continue to push back? Should she expose her identity now, or should she wait? Let the scene unfold further. Let the injustice reveal itself so clearly that no one could deny it. Her heart pounded, but her face remained composed. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and let her voice carry across the marble lobby. "I'm not leaving." The room went quiet again. Even the customers at the far end of the line froze. Linda's jaw tightened. She motioned toward Daniel. "Then our security will have to escort you out." Daniel hesitated, glancing between the two women. The lobby was now a theater, every witness holding their breath. Maya felt the storm inside her settle into something sharper. She was not only standing for herself, she was standing for every person who had ever been told they did not belong. And deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The murmur of voices in the lobby rose as Linda Harper's command echoed across the space. "Security will escort you out." The words carried not only authority, but also finality, as though she were closing a door that had never truly been open. Dr. Maya Johnson stood still. She felt the weight of dozens of eyes pressing down on her. The air in the lobby had shifted. Curiosity had become judgment. Some customers leaned back, crossing their arms, eager to see the drama unfold. Others frowned with unease, aware something was deeply wrong, but unwilling to speak. Daniel Brooks, the guard, hesitated. His hand hovered near his radio, but he didn't move forward. His jaw flexed, and his eyes met Maya's again. Uncertain, Linda's patience thinned. She stepped closer to Maya, lowering her voice, but not enough to escape the ears of those standing nearby. "You're making this difficult, ma'am. This isn't personal. It's about protecting the reputation of this institution." Maya let the words sink in. Her heart was pounding, but her breathing was steady. "Reputation," she repeated, almost to herself. "Tell me whose reputation are you protecting? Because it isn't mine." Linda's face hardened. "Don't twist this. Our clients expect a certain image when they walk through those doors. People like you, well, you disrupt that image." There it was, the truth laid bare. A sharp gasp came from a young man in line, a college student holding a folder of papers. He pulled out his phone and began recording. Others followed, raising their devices discreetly. Maya could feel the shift. What had been a private insult was now becoming a public spectacle. Linda seemed not to notice, or perhaps she no longer cared. She gestured toward Daniel again. "Remove her, please." Daniel took a step forward but stopped short. His voice was low, almost apologetic. "Ma'am, I'll need to ask you to come with me." Maya looked at him, then at the growing circle of cameras. Her father's watch felt heavy in her tote, a reminder of time, of patience, of dignity. She straightened her back and spoke loud enough for every camera to capture. "So let me make sure I understand. I've provided valid ID, valid account documents, and a premium card that proves my status as a client. Yet you are refusing service because of how I look. And now you want to force me out." Her voice was calm, almost too calm, but the words cut deeper than any shout. Eric Collins shifted uncomfortably behind the desk. His fingers tapped against the keyboard as though begging for a distraction. He glanced at Linda, then at Maya, then back again. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. A middle-aged woman in pearls, who had been waiting nearby, shook her head. "This place isn't for everyone, dear," she muttered loud enough to be heard. The sting of her words, casual and cruel, rippled through the room. Maya felt it pierce like an old wound. She remembered being 15, told by a guidance counselor that Ivy League schools weren't realistic for someone like her. She remembered the way her father's hands had trembled when another bank manager decades ago had denied him a small business loan despite flawless credit. But unlike then, This moment was not unfolding in silence. Phones were recording. The truth was being captured, second by second. Maya's mind swirled with competing impulses: fight now or wait, reveal her identity, or let the scene expose itself further. She felt the storm inside her: anger, sorrow, resilience, all colliding, demanding release. She turned to Linda. Is this really the image Sterling & Co. wants? A manager humiliating a paying client in front of an entire lobby. Linda's cheeks flushed. You are not the kind of client we cater to, she snapped. You're holding up real customers. The word real struck like a knife. Gas filled the air. Even Eric winced. At that moment, a man in a tailored suit, holding only a driver's license, stepped to the side counter. Eric glanced at it, typed a few strokes, and within seconds handed him papers with a smile. All set, sir. The man, clearly uncomfortable, glanced at Maya as he walked past. He offered a faint, apologetic shrug, but kept moving. Maya exhaled slowly. Her decision was made. She would not walk away. She would not let this moment vanish like smoke. Her voice carried again, steadier than ever. I will not leave, not until I receive the service that is my right. If you want me out, you will have to explain to every single person here exactly why. Every phone tilted upward, every whisper quieted. The lobby became a stage, and the play unfolding was no longer private. Linda glanced around, realizing the crowd's attention had shifted. But pride, or perhaps fear of losing face, hardened her resolve. Then so be it, she said. Security, now. Daniel's hand shook as he raised the radio, but he hesitated once more, his eyes betraying the conflict within him. He had seen enough in his career to recognize injustice, but standing against it had consequences. Eric finally spoke, his voice trembling. Ms. Harper, maybe we should reconsider. She has all the paperwork. It doesn't make sense. Quiet, Linda snapped, silencing him. Maya's gaze swept the room. She could feel the weight of history pressing on her shoulders. She thought of all those who had been silenced before her, who had left quietly, who had accepted humiliation to avoid escalation. But she also thought of those who had stood firm, who had paid a price so that others could stand taller. The clock ticked on. The cameras recorded. The storm was gathering. And Dr. Maya Johnson, calm yet resolute, knew that the moment of truth was near. The lobby was thick with tension. But inside Dr. Maya Johnson, the conflict was heavier still. She stood rooted to the marble floor, surrounded by whispers, the clicking of phones recording, and Linda Harper's glare that dared her to resist. On the outside she was calm, but within her chest a storm roared, pulling her in two directions. One voice urged her to walk away. Leave. Protect your peace. You don't need this. You've endured worse before. Let them stew in their ignorance and keep your power to yourself. That voice was tempting because it promised relief, an end to the humiliation playing out in public. But another voice, quieter yet stronger, spoke from deeper within. Stand firm. This is not only about you. This is about every person who has ever been told they don't belong. If you walk away, the silence will swallow this moment. If you stay, you may turn it into something greater. Her hand brushed against the outline of the pocket watch in her bag. It had belonged to her father, who had carried it through decades of long hours and closed doors. She remembered the night he told her, "Time is the one thing they can't take from you, Maya. But how you use it, how you stand in it, that's where your power lies." She looked at the wall clock again. Each second ticked louder than the last, like a drumbeat calling her to choose. Linda's voice cut through her thoughts. This is wasting everyone's time. You've made your point. Now step aside. Maya's eyes flicked to the customers watching. The young college student held his phone steady, determination in his face. A businessman shifted uncomfortably, but didn't intervene. The woman in pearls kept her lips pressed in a thin smile, certain of her own belonging. All of them would leave here today carrying their version of this story. Her breath caught. Which version would it be? The one where she bowed her head and left, just another nameless victim of quiet cruelty, or the one where she stood tall, planting herself as proof that dignity could not be denied. She thought of her employees back at Johnson Capital Holdings, thousands of them. She thought of the young black women who often wrote to her, saying they saw themselves in her journey. She thought of the boardrooms where she had been doubted until the numbers spoke for her, where she had forced her way into a seat at the table so others could follow. Her silence now would echo as loudly as her voice. She felt the knot in her chest loosen as clarity settled in. She would not run. She would not shrink. She would stay. But even as she found resolve, fear crept at the edges. Fear of escalation. Fear of being manhandled by security in front of strangers. Fear that her calm strength might fracture under the weight of humiliation. Her gaze drifted again to Daniel Brooks, the guard. He stood frozen, his radio half raised, uncertainty written across his face. He looked like a man caught between orders and conscience. His hesitation gave her a flicker of reassurance. At least one person here saw the truth. Linda, impatient with the pause, slammed her hand lightly on the counter. Enough. This is my branch, and I decide who receives service. You don't belong here, and you never will. The words were louder now, fueled by frustration. A ripple spread through the lobby as more phones lifted into the air. The tension had shifted from private confrontation to public theater. Maya closed her eyes for a brief moment, steadying herself. She let the anger rise and then settle. She let the sorrow wash through her but not drown her. And she let the strength, quiet and deep, take root in its place. When she opened her eyes, her decision was clear. Her father's voice, her mother's lessons, her own years of endurance, all of it converged into one unshakable truth. She was not leaving. Her voice, low but firm, carried across the lobby. If you want me gone, you will have to drag me out, and everyone here will know exactly why. Gasps echoed. Daniel's hand froze on his radio. Eric's mouth fell open. Customers shifted uneasily, torn between fascination and discomfort. Inside, Maya's heart pounded like a drum, but outwardly she was a statue of calm. The storm inside had given way to something sharper resolve. She would not let this branch, this manager, or this moment define her worth. She had carried too much, worked too hard, built too high to let anyone reduce her to an unworthy stranger in a place her investments had helped build. For now, she would wait. Let them make their next move. And when they did, she would be ready. The weight of silence stretched across the lobby, fragile and brittle, as though one more word might shatter it. Doctor. Maya Johnson lifted her chin, her voice steady but cutting through the room like glass. So you are denying me service while granting it freely to others standing right here. Her words ricocheted off the marble walls. The customers shifted, some avoiding eye contact, others pressing their phones higher to capture every syllable. Linda Harper's jaw tightened. That's not what I said, she replied quickly, though her tone betrayed irritation. I am upholding our standards. Standards, Maya repeated, her brows lifting ever so slightly. She turned her head toward the man who had just been served with only a driver's license in hand. "Sir, may I ask what documentation did they require from you?" The man froze, caught between discomfort and conscience. He cleared his throat. Just my license. That was it." A murmur spread. Eric Collins shrank back in his chair, his face paling. Maya looked back at Linda. "So the standard changes, depending on the face you see across the counter." Linda's lips thinned, but she didn't answer. Maya's tone didn't rise. Instead, it dropped lower, more deliberate, the way a judge delivers a sentence. "Tell me, Ms. Harper, how do you decide who is worthy of access? What measure are you using, because it is clearly not the paperwork?" The question lingered, heavy and impossible to dismiss. For a brief moment, Linda faltered. Her eyes flicked around the lobby, aware of the cameras, aware of the audience. Then, with a sudden surge of pride, she snapped. "Our image matters. We cannot risk serving someone who doesn't reflect it." The word image struck like lightning. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman whispered, "Did she really just say that?" Maya let the silence swallow Linda's words. Then she spoke, slow and unshakable. "Your image is exclusion. Your image is humiliation. And today, your image is being recorded by every person here." Phones tilted higher. A young man whispered, "This is going viral." Linda's face flushed. She jabbed a finger toward Daniel Brooks. "Remove her now. She is disrupting this branch." Daniel shifted his weight but didn't move. His eyes flicked from Maya's calm face to Linda's scowl. "Ms. Harper, maybe we should de-escalate," he muttered. But Linda's voice rose, shrill with frustration. "No, if she won't leave, she will be forced out. This is my authority." The escalation was rapid, a fire fed by pride. Maya's hand moved slowly, deliberately, into her tote bag. For a moment, Daniel stiffened, as if preparing for trouble. But Maya only withdrew her laptop sleek, silver, its surface catching the light of the chandelier. She placed it carefully on the counter, the gesture measured, almost ceremonial. "What are you doing?" Linda demanded. Maya met her gaze. "I'm making sure the truth doesn't stay trapped in this lobby." With a few swift keystrokes, her laptop screen came alive. A live connection appeared, the familiar seal of Sterling & Co. Flashing in the corner. Then a voice echoed from the speakers, clear, authoritative, carrying the weight of command. "Maya, is that you?" Gas rippled again. The name alone changed the air. "Yes," Maya replied calmly, her eyes never leaving Linda's. "It's me, and I'm standing in your branch being denied service." Linda's color drained. Her mouth opened, then closed again. On the screen appeared Richard Bennett, the CEO of Sterling & Co. His silver hair and sharp suit filled the camera, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. "Explain," he demanded. Maya didn't flinch. "I presented valid ID, valid account information, and proof of my premium status. Yet I was told I don't belong here." "In front of dozens of witnesses." She paused, then added, "And now the internet." The crowd buzzed, phones trembling as fingers typed frantically. Live streams broadcasting the confrontation beyond the marble walls. Richard's face darkened. "Who is the manager on duty?" Linda swallowed hard. I am, sir." "Then you will explain to me," he said coldly, "why one of our most critical stakeholders is being treated like an intruder." The words detonated in the lobby. Stakeholder. Critical. The whispers became shouts of disbelief. Maya's calm voice sliced through the chaos. I hold significant equity in this institution. My investments have helped keep these doors open, yet your staff tells me I do not belong. Tell me, Richard, what image are you protecting? Her tone wasn't angry. It was surgical, each word cutting with precision. Linda staggered back, pale, her composure unraveling. Eric's face burned red, his hands trembling over the keyboard. Daniel lowered his radio completely, his stance no longer that of a guard ready to act, but of a man choosing sides. The lobby was no longer Sterling and Kokim's domain. It was Maya's stage, her courtroom, her battleground, and she had just begun. The lobby had become a stage, and all eyes were fixed on the screen of Maya Johnson's laptop. Richard Bennett's face filled the monitor, every wrinkle carved deeper by fury. He wasn't furious at Maya. He was furious at what was unfolding in one of his most prestigious branches. Maya, Richard said, his voice clipped. Tell me exactly what happened. Maya didn't hesitate. I walked into Sterling & Co. this morning to access my account and my safety deposit box. I presented the required identification, my authorization documents, and my premium client card. Despite this, I was denied service. I was told I didn't belong here. She let the silence rest before adding, and now, Mr. Bennett, your entire client base is watching. The cameras in the lobby, raised higher than ever, captured every word. Live streams buzzed. Comments rolled across screens. Unbelievable. She's so calm it's chilling. That manager's career is over. Richard's expression hardened. Ms. Harper, he snapped. Step into my office. Now. But Linda Harper could barely form words. Her mouth opened, then closed. Sir, this is a misunderstanding. I was only following protocol. Protocol. Richard's voice rose, sharp as a blade. Your protocol just humiliated one of our largest investors in front of an audience that now spans the internet. Do you have any idea what this means for us? Maya remained silent for a moment, then leaned slightly toward the camera, her eyes locked on Richard's. Her voice was calm, deliberate, and heavy with consequence. I am prepared to pull $2.3 billion out of Sterling & Co. within the next 10 minutes. That's my company's equity stake. That's my liquidity. That's every cent my teams manage through your institution. Gaffes erupted in the lobby. Eric Collins nearly dropped the pen in his hand. Daniel Brooks froze mid-breath. Even Linda, pale and trembling, stumbled backward as though the words had physical weight. The audience on their phones exploded. Hashtags ignited. Ichu, justice for Maya. Sterling scandal. You don't belong here. Richard blinked. Stunned. Maya, please. She cut him off gently, her voice never rising above its steady rhythm. Richard, this isn't about me. It's about every person who has been told they don't belong. Every door closed unjustly. Every humiliation swallowed in silence. Today, I won't be silent. If Sterling & Co. represents exclusion, then Sterling & Co. will no longer represent me. The lobby erupted in whispers. Some customers clutched their phones as if history itself was unfolding in their hands. The young college student whispered to the camera, She's about to change everything. Richard's face paled. You can't mean that. Maya leaned closer. I never say what I don't mean. 2.3 billion. 10 minutes. Unless action is taken right now. Linda stumbled forward, desperate. Please, Miss Johnson, this isn't necessary. Maya turned her gaze on her, calm but merciless. Necessary. You told me I didn't belong. You turned this lobby into a theater of humiliation. And now the world sees you for what you are. What's necessary is accountability. The pearl-wearing woman who had mocked Maya earlier shrank back, her face flushed with shame. Even she couldn't deny what was happening. Daniel Brooks lowered his radio completely, stepping slightly closer to Maya, not in confrontation, but in quiet solidarity. His voice, though low, carried enough to be heard. "Ma'am, I believe you." It was a small sentence, but it landed like a hammer. A guard, once a symbol of force, now aligned himself with truth. The tension snapped. Richard's voice broke through, sharp with urgency. "Linda Harper, as of this moment, you are suspended. Eric Collins, remain in place. We'll speak later. Daniel Brooks, stand down. Maya, I am initiating a full investigation effective immediately. Please, let's not escalate further." But Maya wasn't finished. Her storm had only begun to break. "Richard," she said, her tone almost sorrowful, "this isn't escalation. This is revelation. Your branch has revealed itself. Your manager has revealed herself. And now Sterling & Co. must decide what it will reveal to the world. Will you stand for dignity, or will you stand for image?" Richard's lips pressed thin. Sweat glistened on his forehead. The weight of billions, of reputation, of the world's eyes pressing in, bore down on him. The lobby was silent again, waiting. 10 minutes. That was all the time left. Maya closed her laptop slightly, enough to signal finality but not enough to sever the connection. Then she turned to the crowd, her voice soft but carrying. "This is why we can't remain silent. Because silence keeps doors closed. But today, doors will open." The young college student's livestream comments scrolled so fast the screen blurred. Icon. Queen energy. She's saving all of us. The marble lobby no longer felt like a bank. It felt like a courtroom, a stage, a battlefield. And Maya, calm and resolute, stood at the center of it all not as a victim, but as the one rewriting the script. The 10 minutes had barely begun, yet the collapse had already started. Across the lobby, the glow of phone screens reflected in wide eyes. Customers who had once whispered now spoke openly, narrating the scene into their live streams. "You're watching this live at Sterling & Co." one man said breathlessly. "A black CEO just got denied service. Look at this. It's going everywhere. On Twitter, the hashtag #OurJusticeForMaya climbed from a trickle to a torrent within minutes. Clips from the lobby spread like wildfire. Linda's icy, 'You don't belong here.' Maya's calm defiance. Richard Bennett's stunned face on the laptop screen. Memes, captions, outraged comments, thousands in seconds, millions in minutes. Eric Collins sat stiffly at his desk, his screen forgotten, his hands trembling. He glanced at Maya, then back at his monitor, knowing every keystroke he made now might be scrutinized by the world. Shame burned in his chest. He had gone along with Linda because it was easier, but now easier was collapsing beneath him. Daniel Brooks, meanwhile, stood taller. His hesitation had turned into conviction. He folded his arms, no longer the branch's guard, but Maya's silent ally. The decision sat heavy on his shoulders, but it felt right. For once, he had chosen principle over orders. Linda Harper, however, was unraveling. She tugged at the lapel of her blazer, her face blotched with panic. The walls of authority she had relied on for years were crumbling in front of her. "This isn't fair," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "She's making a scene," but no one was listening. The college student holding his phone up whispered to his audience of thousands, "She's not making a scene. She's making history." Maya stood still, composed as if she had all the time in the world. Yet inside, she felt the weight of those ticking minutes. Her ultimatum was more than a threat. It was a test. Would Richard Bennett act fast enough, or would she have to follow through? Could she truly dismantle billions of dollars of partnership in a single morning? Her calm face betrayed none of the storm in her chest. On the laptop screen, Richard was pacing now, phone pressed to his ear, issuing commands to unseen executives. His voice drifted through the speakers. Pull legal, call PR, get compliance on this now. Then back to Maya. I'm asking for your patience. Just give me more time. Maya's voice cut across him like steel wrapped in velvet. Time is the one thing I cannot give. Richard, not anymore. The crowd murmured again. Every word she spoke was clipped into sound bites and blasted online, framed with hashtags and captions, not anymore. Stocks began to dip. Screens and brokerage apps across the country flashed red. News anchors interrupted segments with breaking headlines. Sterling & Co. faces viral scandal. Billion-dollar investor threatens immediate withdrawal after being denied service. The dominoes were falling, Linda finally snapped, turning toward Maya in desperation. You don't understand what you're doing. You'll ruin everything for the staff, for this branch. Think of the consequences. Maya turned her gaze on her, eyes calm but piercing. I am thinking of the consequences, the ones your actions create every time you tell someone they don't belong. You thought those consequences would remain invisible, but today they are visible to the world. Linda's breath caught. There was no comeback. Eric finally spoke, voice trembling but firm. Ms. Johnson, I'm sorry. I should have spoken up sooner. Maya looked at him, and for the first time since stepping into the branch, her expression softened. It's not too late to start. Eric. The words landed gently, but their meaning thundered in his chest. The cameras captured everything, the shame in Eric's eyes, the collapse in Linda's posture, the steadiness of Maya's stance. Outside, news vans screeched to a halt on the curb. Journalists spilled into the street, pointing cameras toward the tall glass doors. The branch was no longer just a bank. It was a fishbowl, and the world was pressing its face to the glass. Inside, Richard Bennett's voice grew strained. Maya, listen. I'll make this right. Immediate suspensions. Public apology. We'll do whatever it takes. Maya's answer came slow, deliberate. Then do it. Not tomorrow. Not after your PR team drafts a statement. Now. The crowd held its breath. On the screen, Richard turned sharply. Effective immediately. Linda Harper and her entire management staff are terminated. This branch will be closed until further notice, and every client in this room will receive a written apology by the end of the day. The announcement dropped like a thunderclap. Gasps, cheers, shouts filled the air. Phones trembled in hands. Hashtags exploded anew. Or our branch fired. Maya wins. History. In the lobby. Linda staggered back as though struck. Her legs buckled against the counter. Her authority ripped from her in seconds. Eric buried his face in his hands, overwhelmed. Daniel exhaled, a long breath of relief. The customers erupted into disbelief and applause. And Maya. She stood still, her calm unbroken, her voice the final chord in the symphony of collapse. 10 minutes, she said softly, almost to herself. It didn't even take that long. The echo of Richard Bennett's decree still hung in the air when the glass doors of Sterling & Co. burst open. Reporters rushed in, cameras flashing like lightning, microphones thrust forward as though to capture every heartbeat. The once pristine lobby was no longer a sanctuary of marble and quiet power. It had become the epicenter of a national storm. Dr. Johnson, can you confirm You're withdrawing 2.3 billion, one journalist shouted. Did you really fire the entire branch in less than 10 minutes? Another pressed. Phones still hovered in the air, live streams continuing to broadcast every angle. The viral tidal wave had broken through the glass and was flooding into the world outside. Linda Harper, once towering in her authority, looked smaller than ever. She fumbled with her blazer, her face pale as the cameras turned toward her. "This is being blown out of proportion," she muttered, but her words were drowned out by the journalist's frenzy. Someone shouted, "Ms. Harper, how do you respond to being accused of discrimination?" Linda froze, lips trembling, eyes darting to Maya for rescue. She knew would not come. For the first time, the weight of her decisions bore down fully. Her reign was over, not with the dignity of retirement, but with the shame of exposure. Eric Collins sat hunched at his desk, his hands pressed to his forehead. He replayed every moment: the smirk when Maya first walked in, the silence when Linda mocked her, the way he had looked away instead of speaking up. Now the cameras swept past him too, and he felt naked under their gaze. He whispered to no one, "I should have done better." Daniel Brooks, standing at Maya's side, felt his own heart hammering. He hadn't dragged her out, hadn't obeyed Linda's orders, and now the world knew it. There was fear in that knowledge, but also a strange relief. For once in his life, he had chosen the harder right instead of the easier wrong. He straightened his posture, ready for whatever came next. Maya stood at the center, still and calm, though inside her chest the storm hadn't fully settled. The cameras swarmed, but she didn't raise her voice or posture for them. She spoke softly, yet every microphone bent toward her as if drawn by gravity. "This morning, I came here for something simple: access to my account. Instead, I was told I did not belong. What happened in this lobby is not just about me. It is about a system that judges people by appearance before it judges them by merit. That system must change." Her words rippled through the room, carried instantly to television anchors and social feeds. Viewers across the country leaned closer to their screens. It wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was a mirror reflecting their own experiences of exclusion, of being told no without reason. Outside, headlines updated in real time. Black CEO denied service, turns tables on Sterling & Co. 10 minutes of Justice Bank branch fired in viral showdown. Systemic bias. Exposed one woman's stand sparks national outrage. Linda tried once more to salvage her dignity, stepping toward a cluster of microphones. "I was following protocol," she began, but her voice cracked, drowned beneath a wave of questions. She realized, too late, that no one believed her anymore. Eric finally rose from his desk. His voice was small but audible. "She's right," he said, gesturing toward Maya. "She gave us everything we needed. And I didn't say anything. I let it happen." His confession sent a stir through the crowd. Cameras spun toward him. The guilt in his eyes told a story more damning than any accusation. Maya turned her head, offering him a look that was neither condemnation nor forgiveness. It was something heavier, a silent reminder that accountability was not the end, but the beginning of change. Daniel stepped closer, finally speaking with the weight of his uniform behind him. "She never raised her voice. She never broke a rule. She asked for equal treatment, and she was denied. I saw it with my own eyes." His statement, clear and firm, cut through the noise like a gavel striking wood. The reporters scribbled furiously. The viral fire spread faster. Sterling and Koke's stock plunged another point before the hour was out. But while the world raged, Maya felt the quiet weight settle in her chest. This victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like responsibility. She hadn't just defended herself. She had opened a door for countless others to walk through. She could already sense the tide calls from activists, inquiries from regulators, expectations from communities that had been waiting for someone to say aloud what they had lived silently for years. She closed her laptop, tucking it back into her bag. For the first time since she entered, her eyes swept the lobby not as a battlefield, but as a place transformed. It was no longer Sterling and Coba's stage. It was everyone's. As she walked toward the doors, flashes still bursting, questions still flying, she felt the truth settle deeper inside her bones. The fight was no longer just hers. It belonged to everyone who had ever been told, "You don't belong here." And for them, she would not stop. 3 days after the chaos at Sterling & Co., the world had not stopped talking. The clips had been replayed on every major news channel, dissected on podcasts, and captioned across social media platforms. But for Dr. Maya Johnson, the real work was just beginning. In her office high above Manhattan, the city stretched wide beneath her windows. The skyline glowed with ambition. But Maya's eyes were focused on the documents spread across her desk. Headlines screamed from the newspapers piled nearby. Bank branch fired in 10 minutes. Johnson versus Sterling. The showdown that shook Wall Street. She knew this could not remain a spectacle. It had to become a catalyst. Her phone buzzed with yet another call from Washington. Lawmakers wanted her testimony. Civil rights leaders wanted her partnership. Universities wanted her words for their commencement stages. The weight of expectation pressed heavy, but Maya did not shrink beneath it. She welcomed it. She called her assistant into the room. "Draft the charter," she said. "We're launching the Dignity Fund. Initial seed, $100 million. The mission is simple. No one denied service. Ever again." The assistant blinked. $100 million. Ma'am Maya nodded. "It will grow, but we need to start with something bold. We'll provide legal aid for anyone discriminated against by financial institutions, emergency grants for those denied housing or business loans because of bias, and scholarships for the next generation of leaders who will dismantle this system from the inside." The assistant scribbled furiously, her hands shaking with the magnitude of the task. By the end of the week, the Dignity Fund was born. The announcement alone sent shockwaves, a black CEO turning personal humiliation into a movement with resources to match. Communities that had felt voiceless for decades now had a beacon. Calls poured in. Stories surfaced of denied mortgages, blocked business accounts, subtle exclusions that had long been buried in silence. Maya read each one late into the night. Tears sometimes blurred her vision, but she never stopped. Every letter was proof that what had happened to her was not isolated. It was systemic, and it demanded systemic change. Meanwhile, Sterling & Co. scrambled to contain the fallout. Their stock had dropped 12% in a week. Richard Bennett appeared on national television, apologizing directly to Maya and promising reforms. He announced a sweeping new policy, independent oversight, mandatory anti-bias training, and transparency reports on client service, but few believed it was enough. The public wanted accountability, not just apologies. Congress summoned Richard and Maya for hearings. The chamber was packed, cameras broadcasting live. A senator leaned forward, addressing Maya. "Dr. Johnson, what do you believe needs to change? Not just in Sterling & Co., but across the industry." Maya's voice was calm, but it carried with the resonance of conviction. We must move beyond apologies and into accountability. Banks must be transparent. Every client deserves equal access, whether they arrive in a suit or sneakers. This isn't just about finance. It's about dignity. Applause erupted from the gallery. For once, a congressional hearing felt less like theater and more like a turning point. In the weeks that followed, whispers of a new bill began, the Fair Access Act, legislation aimed at prohibiting discriminatory practices in financial services. The movement was gaining political traction. Back in her own company, Maya addressed her employees in a town hall streamed globally. Thousands of faces filled the virtual grid. She looked into the camera with the steadiness of a leader who had endured and triumphed. What happened in that branch could happen anywhere. She told them, it could happen to your mother, your brother, your neighbor. That is why our work matters. We are not only building wealth, we are building justice. Her employees erupted in applause, many wiping away tears. Yet in the quiet moments, Maya still felt the heaviness. She thought often of Eric Collins, whose trembling apology still echoed in her mind. She thought of Daniel Brooks, who had risked his job by refusing to enforce injustice. She thought, too, of Linda Harper, not with malice, but with a strange sorrow. How many others like Linda existed, clinging to small thrones of power, blind to the humanity in front of them? One evening, as the city lights flickered outside, Maya opened a handwritten letter from a young woman in Atlanta. I saw what you did. I work at a bank, too. Every day I watch people get turned away. Sometimes I want to speak up, but I'm scared. You showed me I don't have to be silent. Thank you. Maya held the letter against her chest, closing her eyes. This was why she kept going. The fight wasn't about vengeance. It was about unlocking voices, giving courage to the silent, hope to the weary. And so the story of a single morning at Sterling & Co. became something larger than scandal. It became the spark of a movement, a challenge to an industry, a call to a nation. Dr. Maya Johnson had not just defended her dignity, she had demanded dignity for all. 6 months later, the glass doors of Sterling & Co.'s downtown branch opened once more. This time, the atmosphere was different. Gone was the icy hush of superiority, the whispered judgments, the quiet daggers of exclusion. In their place was a warmth Maya could feel the moment she stepped inside. The marble floors still gleamed, the counters still stretched in polished rows, but the energy had shifted. The air no longer belonged to hierarchy. It belonged to welcome. A greeter approached her with a genuine smile. Good morning, Dr. Johnson. We're honored to have you here. His tone carried no edge of rehearsed politeness. It was sincere. Maya nodded, offering a quiet smile in return. She wasn't here to make a spectacle. She was here to see whether the seeds she had planted had grown. The branch looked different, too. Posters lined the walls with new slogans: every client, every time, equal service. Screens displayed updates on community projects, including scholarships funded by the Dignity Fund. The once aloof institution had begun to look like a partner, not a gatekeeper. Behind one counter, she noticed Eric Collins. His posture was straighter, his demeanor transformed. When his eyes met hers, he froze for a moment, then walked over nervously. Dr. Johnson, he said softly, I wasn't sure you'd come back. Maya studied him for a beat before replying, I wasn't sure either. Eric swallowed hard. I've been trying to do better. I'm part of the new equity training team. I volunteer at the workshops every Saturday. It's not enough to erase what happened. I know, But I wanted you to know I'm not the same man you met that day. For the first time. Maya let her smile deepen. That's all any of us can do. Eric. Learn. Change. And do better. A weight seemed to lift from his shoulders. He nodded, almost grateful for her words, and returned to his post. Near the entrance stood Daniel Brooks, now in a new uniform. His badge read, Community Liaison Officer. When he saw Maya, his face broke into an easy grin. They gave me this role after everything, he said, gesturing to the badge. Instead of just standing guard, I get to train new hires on how to de-escalate with respect. Feels different, you know. It feels right, Maya replied. Daniel's grin widened, but his eyes glistened faintly. Thank you for not letting me stay silent. You gave me courage that day. Maya placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. You gave yourself courage. Don't forget that. As she moved deeper into the lobby, she felt eyes following her, but not with suspicion this time. With gratitude. With recognition. Some nodded subtly. Others simply smiled. All carried an awareness that this place had been reshaped by her stand. In a quiet corner, a young mother approached with her daughter, no older than 10. Excuse me, the mother said, her voice trembling slightly. I just wanted to say thank you. Because of the Dignity Fund, I was able to secure a loan to open my daycare. And my daughter, she looked down at the little girl who clutched a folder. She just got a scholarship. None of this would have been possible without what you did. The little girl handed Maya the folder. Inside was a drawing, a woman standing tall in front of a building, her hair flowing, her arms open wide. Above it, written in crayon, were the words, You belong here. Maya's throat tightened. She crouched down, looking the child in the eyes. That's beautiful. And so are you. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. The girl beamed, and Maya carefully tucked the drawing into her bag. As she prepared to leave, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway, Richard Bennett. The CEO's face looked older than 6 months ago, but also lighter, as if humility had carved away some of his arrogance. Dr. Johnson, he said, I wanted to thank you for forcing us to face what we refused to see. Maya tilted her head. It wasn't about forcing. It was about revealing. The truth was always here. Richard sighed. We've lost clients. Yes. We've lost reputation. Yeah. But we've also rebuilt. Stronger. Fairer. That's because of you. Maya met his gaze steadily. Then don't waste it. Make sure no one else has to fight the way I did. He nodded solemnly. As Maya stepped back into the city sunlight, she felt something she hadn't on that fateful day peace. The storm had not broken her. It had rebuilt something far larger than herself. The sidewalks buzzed with life. The skyscrapers loomed. The world pressed on. Yet in her heart, there was a quiet knowing. History would remember Sterling & Co. as the bank that tried to tell her she didn't belong. But it would also remember the day a black CEO stood tall, unshaken, and transformed humiliation into justice. Maya adjusted the strap of her bag, her hand brushing against the child's drawing inside. The words whispered in her mind like a hymn, You belong here. And she knew, deep in her bones, that so did everyone else. Life often tests us not in grand arenas, but in quiet, everyday places, a lobby, a counter, a conversation. Dr. Maya Johnson's story is not only about a bank. It is about the countless times people are judged before they are known, dismissed before they are heard. For older audiences, this lesson strikes deep. We have all faced moments when dignity was questioned, when we had to decide between silence and truth. The heart of her story is simple, yet profound dignity cannot be negotiated. It is not tied to wealth, titles, or the clothes we wear. It belongs to us from birth. And when it is denied, we each have the power, sometimes even the responsibility, to stand and say, "No more." In our daily lives, this may mean speaking up when we see unfairness, supporting those who are silenced, or choosing compassion over judgment. The ripple effect of one voice can inspire thousands. Maya's courage reminds us that justice begins with ordinary people refusing to accept the unacceptable. Let us carry this truth when we protect the dignity of others. We protect our own. Thank you for sharing your time and emotions with us today. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories that inspire change and remind us of the dignity we all deserve.